Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Crime and Coffee Couple. My name's Allison.
And my name's Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, L-E-P-R-D. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back in these seats. Yes, I know it sounded like we were right on track, but we took a little break for Christmas and pre-recorded, and now we're back again.
And specifically, before we got on, she was like, no, don't talk about anything because like this is coming out at the end of January, so you got to make sure blah, 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 blah.
Well, whatever, Mike. You know, rules are meant to be bent. They're meant to be broken.
I guess it's okay for you, and that's okay. That's all that matters, and that's all I care about is you.
But we're back at it, and hopefully I'm not too rusty.
Yeah, we'll find out here shortly. So thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. We come after you every single Sunday with a free episode, something true crimey that Allison researched like crazy. So we got another episode coming to you here shortly. But yeah, we went through so much. We've got this freaking leak in our house. Like when we came back from vacation, we found it. Our hot water wasn't working. And I was like, well, maybe it's a hot water heater we got 1 year ago. And I was like, okay, I had to call somebody. He came out. He's like, no, there's a leak somewhere because he turned off the hot water. And then all of a sudden the like water meter stopped going. So he's like, yeah, it's definitely in the hot water thing. And I go into like the other room and then there's some squishy stuff underneath. And it's like, oh, don't worry. We're only gonna have to rip up a bunch of concrete and wood and stuff. I'm like, yeah, we've got $6,000 laying around. Sure. Sounds good. It's like, I don't know. We're going to figure it out some way.
I'm dreading the whole process. It's leaving me with anxiety. But now that we're in a new year, I'm thinking to myself, what's the point of worrying when I have no control over the situation?
Exactly. It's got to get taken care of, right? I think part of the worry is that I have to take care of it. So you're worried that I'm not going to make the right calls and stuff.
I just feel like sometimes things take a lot longer than they should. So I don't want to be in this situation for months on end.
Well, we got to get homeowners insurance involved and all this stuff, especially if there's concrete and all this like slab that's going to have to be drilled into it. Like this sucks so bad.
I mean, I can't take cold showers. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I wish I was somebody that could, but I am not joking. I cannot get into that water.
Well,
I can't do it.
It's a lot easier here in Florida because usually the ground isn't like below zero like a lot of our friends here. But
except it was 30 something degrees.
Yeah, it's going to be a little chilly. Going to be a little chilly. So just take that. You're fine. It's all these people talk about taking those cold baths and stuff. This is your opportunity. Just do it.
I really don't think I can.
Yeah. Other things we got going on. I don't know. We'll figure that out. We got some stupid dog barking in our neighborhood. Like, what do you do? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Can I tell you?
What?
I send these postcards online. Like I just go to these postcards and you just send like a random postcard. So I think what I'm going to do is just be like, your dog barks a lot and just send that postcard because it's only like 50 cents and they send it from like a random address.
Do you know whose house it is?
Yeah, it's a couple doors down.
Okay. It's so annoying because it's nice in the day in Florida. So we have our windows all wide open and this dog is just incessantly barking. And if you've seen Seinfeld, if you're a fan, there was the one episode where Elaine is like desperately tired because her neighbor's dog just barks through the night.
3 hours of sleep again last night. 3 hours of sleep because of that dog.
Yeah, and this one isn't through the night all the time, but just right now, like our dog, if she hears it during this episode, she's going to be like, because she's a little shorty.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I'm just somebody that would never let my dog be out in the yard barking constantly.
And maybe they're having a party, and, it's the weekend we're recording this, or it's a day off. So it's like, I don't know. It's maybe that's it. But I like them to know. I don't want to be like a jerk and be like, you better shut that dog up or else. Because I love dogs, but it's a little bit too much. And they never really let it bark. The people across the way from us, they let that dog bark all the time, and it's horrible.
Oh my gosh, it's the worst. Sometimes it's like a weird noise that makes me think like the dog is being harmed. And we called animal control, and they're like, we can't do anything about it.
Unless you have video.
Yes.
So I'm trying to find video, and I can't, I can never get him choking the dog. Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like, I'm like, oh my God.
It makes me cry sometimes. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And this same guy, there's rumors floating around that this same guy had like dead cats in his garage. So it sounds like we live in a great neighborhood. So,
I don't know. It's one of those homes that it's like, I'm sure that backyard is riddled with bodies.
Yeah.
That's the type of person that lives behind us.
Absolutely. 100%. Just so if that guy's listening, we have guns in strategic spots all over the house, literally all over the house. Like right here. Bam, bam, bam.
It's
right
like
there.
Dwight Schrute in the office. He had his star under the desk and the mace.
Right. It's
all,
smart.
All those weapons within reach.
Yeah, smart to do.
So anything else going on in your life, Mike?
Oh, so many things. We're making a Gordon Ramsay little dish tonight. I'm really excited to try it.
Beef Wellington.
Yeah, beef Wellington. If you ever watch the Hell's Kitchen or any of those things, he always has the chefs prepare a beef Wellington, which is a beef tenderloin, which is your typical, what's the kind of steak? steak?
A fillet.
Fillet. It's like your fillet that you get. It's just the long piece of it, where if you're making a fillet, they cut it into slices and you get a steak. But this is the whole thing, and then you wrap it and like you made all
Yeah,
this
it's
stuff.
a lot of steps. I mean, honestly, when you break it down, it's not that hard, but it is a lot of steps. Like I had to make this mushroom mixture, and then I had to make these chive crepes, and then you rub it with like Dijon mustard, and you wrap it in prosciutto, and then said crepes and said mushroom mixture, and then a puff pastry.
Holy cow, that's a lot of steps.
It is a lot of steps, but it's one of those, special dishes.
Yeah, and you're great at stuff like that. Whereas if it was me, I didn't have you. There's zero. There's less than a 0% chance of me ever making this in my life by myself. Because if there's multiple steps to something, it's like nope. I'm
Your
out.
brain shuts down. It's like, nope, I'm out.
It's too much. Like I love it. Like you got a beef tenderloin. It's a delicious cut of meat. So I mean, like I think we did Christmas or something with your family. We just steered it on a couple sides and let it bake, and it was freaking delicious. So yeah, I like that. I like nice and easy. Now I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy eating it, but making it, no thanks.
Well, I've taken care of all the steps, so it's going to be nice and easy for you.
Yes, exactly. And so you folks that are not watching and you're just listening, hop on over to YouTube and look at Allison's shirt. It's very pretty and cute. She's a cutie. It's like a lime green sweater, and I like it in you. I like it on you. Sorry guys, that's not for this YouTube channel, but I like you a lot.
I like you too. It's American Eagle, and it is so soft.
This
Oh my
isn't
gosh.
this is not an advertisement.
No, we're not being sponsored, but I got one for our daughter in a different color and one for your mom in a different color.
Oh, how nice.
It's just nice and light. Oh, it's like butter on my skin.
Yeah, now you're cute. So sorry to keep going on here.
All right, so let's dive into this hot cup of coffee.
You're a hot cup of coffee.
Thank you. So are you. So this is a listener suggestion from Amber, and this is the case of the Lost Boys of Bucks County. So during the summer of 2017, after one young man vanished in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, authorities suddenly realized that 3 other young men had also gone missing, one after the other. So other than a pair of friends who were missing, the 4 men were otherwise seemingly not connected to each other and started with separate missing person cases. So as the days went by, the common thread between the men would shed light on who was responsible for their deaths. So Bucks County is situated in the eastern portion of Pennsylvania, and with a population of about 646,000 in 2020, it is the 4th most populated county in Pennsylvania. So it's also one of the 3 original counties created by William Penn in 1682.
How about that?
So the case began at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, July 5th, 2017 in Newtown, Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, when 19-year-old Jimmy Patrick told his grandmother, this is Sharon Patrick, that he was going to meet up with some friends at Chick-fil-A. Super innocent. They were meeting up for some chicken nuggets. So he assured her that he wouldn't be out too late, and before he left the house, they did what they always did. Sharon gave her grandson a kiss goodbye. They each said that they loved each other. And as Jimmy walked out the door, he said he'd be home soon. But the hours continued to tick by, and that didn't happen. He didn't come home. So since Jimmy's mom suffered from schizophrenia and dealt with substance abuse issues since the time that he was born, it was his grandparents that stepped in to raise him. And this was from the very beginning. So at the point in time when Jimmy was born, they were in their 50s. They were working full time. They didn't anticipate raising an infant. But being amazing grandparents, they stepped in and did that. So from the day after he was born, they raised him as their own, and he thrived under their care. So according to Jimmy's grandfather, this is Richard Patrick, anytime their grandson was going to be out late, he would go into their bedroom and kind of like touch their shoulder, just basically to say, I'm home. And then they could rest peacefully the rest of the night, knowing that Jimmy was home safe.
If somebody did that to you, you'd be like, get your hand off me. I'm trying to sleep. Why would you do that?
Now I can't go back to sleep.
Yeah, the kids know they can touch my shoulder.
Mike always paints me out, if you're new to this podcast, to be a horribly wicked person.
And usually she proves me right. So that's good.
So that night, I will tell you though, Jimmy had not come home. He hadn't gone into the room and touched their shoulder. So this was very much out of the ordinary. So not only was he an amazing student, he also excelled in both baseball and basketball. And he was such an outstanding athlete that he had been given a scholarship to Loyola University, Maryland for over $50,000. Richard and Sharon, they could not have been more proud of their grandson and the man that he was becoming. He had gotten scholarships to nearly every large college that he applied to. So it was basically his job to take a pick. Which school did he want? And since Loyola in Maryland had been his dream school, it was a pretty easy choice for him. So by July of 2017, Jimmy was on summer break and he was getting ready to start his sophomore year of college. He was studying business. So his freshman year was great. It was wonderful. He had excellent grades. He had made the dean's list during his first semester. And then during his second semester, he was part of the business honor fraternity. So that summer, he was staying busy. He was working part-time. He was at a local restaurant. And then when he wasn't working, he was either spending time with his grandparents or he was out and about socializing with his friends. Very typical for a 19-year-old on summer break from college. So he was a very hardworking kid. He always strived to contribute to the household. So he would pay for his own gas. He even bought his grandma her Prius. So he was just a really outstanding kid. Richard and Sharon could only imagine what his future what would lay ahead for him. I always say to our kids, the world is truly your oyster. You can do anything you want to do. So they could only picture what kind of a life he would have after his college graduation.
Well, this kid's driven too. A tremendous athlete, great at grades. I mean, it seems like a really good all-around kid. Who buys their parents and grandparents a car? Like, that's crazy.
That's really, truly amazing. So when Jimmy still hadn't come home by the following morning and their text to him went unanswered, they were immediately concerned. And in total, Sharon ended up sending her grandson 22 text messages. Normally, within about 10 minutes, he would respond. So the fact that 22 had gone unanswered was highly out of character. So when they called around to his friends to see if they knew where he was, this is when they learned that they had no idea of this plan about meeting up at Chick-fil-A the day before, like Jimmy said. So this was really confusing to them, and they couldn't understand why Jimmy would have lied about his plans. So when they checked their home security camera, seeing did he come home for a brief period of time and go back out, they saw the last images of their grandson. It was him throwing away a white garbage bag that was filled with trash just into the garbage bin, and then he walked out of the garage at 5:50 p.m. on July 5th, the day before. This is when he said he was going to Chick-fil-A to meet his friends. But we know that that wasn't true. And like I said, this is the last time they ever saw their grandson. So when Richard and Sharon contacted the police at noon on Thursday, this is July 6th, they were reporting their grandson missing, but they were told that they would have to wait 24 hours until they could do so. So distraught with worry, they called back at 4 p.m. and it was clear that their concerns weren't being taken seriously. They were basically being blown off to say, "Oh, I'm sure he's with his girlfriend and he'll come back soon." So later that evening, the Newtown Township Police sent a patrolman out to their house. He was basically taking an entry, making a report, a type of log, and he just said, "Oh, I'm sure your grandson will show up soon," and he left. So Richard and Sharon gave the officer Jimmy's cell phone number as well as a picture of him, as well as a description of what he was wearing when he left the house the day before. So all the while, they felt that they were living in a nightmare and their minds were just whirring with, potential possibilities of where he could be. So when authorities traced his cell phone, his last ping was from Springfield in Delaware County. This is a location about 50 miles away. So learning this information, Richard went out to this location and he saw that there was a nearby park. So he walked through the park, hoping to maybe find a clue, something that might indicate that their grandson was there, but he found nothing. So they began hanging missing person posters, but by day 3, there was still no sign of their grandson. And like I said, this is someone that always contacted them if he was going to be out late. So they knew in their hearts that something must be terribly wrong. So meanwhile, they had grown so frustrated by the lack of progress on the police's end that they hired their own private investigator. So the private investigator spoke with all of Jimmy's friends to get a picture of what his last days entailed. So when he touched base with the county detectives, this is when he learned that another boy was also missing in Bucks County. This is 19-year-old Dean Finicaro. So immediately they began to wonder, are these two cases related? Because these places are nearby and both boys are 19 years old. So when Richard was told that Dean disappeared on Friday, July 7th, this is 2 days after they last saw Jimmy, he didn't think that his grandson's case had anything to do with Dean's. He thought there must just be a coincidence that two boys happened to disappear.
Yeah, because usually you see a few days between, or weeks even, between disappearances if it's the same person.
And not to mention, Jimmy's phone last pinged in an entirely different county. So although Dean and his family lived rather close to Richard and Sharon, the boys had gone to two different high schools. They each graduated in 2016, but they ran with a different circle of friends because they went to two different high schools. So when Officer Megan Freer was out on patrol that Friday, she received a call about the missing 19-year-old from Middletown Township. So she went to the Finicaro home to speak with Dean's parents. This is Bonnie and Anthony. So since Dean had gotten in trouble in the past, apparently he would go out onto these joy rides with his friends on dirt bikes, kind of rip around town. Officer Freer was actually familiar with Dean.
It's a good old-fashioned fun.
So according to Bonnie, her son was absolutely fearless. Not only did he love dirt bike riding with friends, but when he played hockey, he never once hesitated to take on a bigger opponent. And during a vacation to Jamaica where they were jumping off of cliffs, Dean was the first to just bolt up and jump off. We all know somebody like that. It is certainly not me.
Definitely not.
I wish I was a more fearless person, but I'm not. So when Officer Freer took the missing person report, Dean's parents and several of his friends were gathered at the house. They were probably talking about where Dean could possibly be. So I will tell you, Bonnie and Anthony were worried because their son had a wild streak and he was known to officers. They wondered if Officer Freer wouldn't take the report seriously. So they indicated that in the months leading up to their son's disappearance, Dean had actually started to get his life more in line with what he should be doing, and he really seemed to be maturing. He had gotten a pit bull that he named Ace, and his parents could just see how nurturing and caring and responsible he was with his dog. Not to mention, he had been working more than 50 hours a week that summer. He was working as a cook at a local restaurant, which was Richmond's Ice Cream and Burger Company. So he was really getting himself on track, and they truly felt that he didn't just go off with friends and not call and tell them. Because even though he did have a bit of a wild streak, he still touched base with his parents whenever he went out.
Yeah, because he liked to do fun things doesn't mean he's a guy that doesn't care about his parents.
Right. So Friday, July 7th, 2017, this is the day that Dean disappeared. It was actually his day off of work, and since his mom, Bonnie, was away on a girls' trip, Anthony thought it would be a good opportunity to go out to dinner with his son. So when he came home from work, he suggested they go out and get sushi for dinner. This was Dean's favorite food, and he just thought it would be a good opportunity to catch up with Dean because, as working parents, you got a teenager, they're running this way, you're running that way. It's great to sit down and have a meal together.
We do the same thing when you're out of town. It's like, okay, what can we do special tonight? Just something, just to have that connection.
And Anthony said that they had a great dinner together. They were just chatting and eating, and it was just wonderful. And meanwhile, Bonnie recalled the last interaction that she had with her son. This was before she left for her girls' trip that Friday afternoon. She hugged her son. She told him that she loved him. So when Dean and Anthony got home from their sushi dinner, Anthony headed down to the basement. And this is shortly after then he heard Dean call down that he was going to go out and meet up with some friends, but he said he would only be gone for about 15 minutes. So when Anthony asked who he was going with, Dean explained that it was a neighborhood kid. And looking back now that Dean hadn't come home, Anthony regrets that he wasn't upstairs and he hadn't seen Dean leave the house. So he wasn't sure, who he was with when he walked out the door that day.
What he was wearing
Right.
or what he was carrying, whatever.
He probably knew what he was wearing because they had dinner together,
Yeah.
but he wasn't able to see the situation of when he actually physically left the house. So about an hour later, of course, his son said he'd be home in about 15 minutes. Anthony was wondering where he was, so he just texted Dean to ask, when are you coming home? But hours continued to go by, and just as it was with Jimmy and his grandparents, Dean wasn't answering his text messages. So meanwhile, then all of his calls were going straight to voicemail. So when Dean still wasn't back by Saturday morning, Anthony was pacing around the house. He was worried sick, and he started to call around to police departments and various local hospitals to see if their son was there. And although Dean had a tendency of being a reckless teenager, like I had mentioned, he always called his parents if he was staying out later than anticipated. So when Bonnie is now coming back from her girls' trip on Saturday evening, of course, Anthony is explaining the situation, and this is when they decided to contact the police to report their son missing. So since it was a holiday weekend, this is the weekend after the 4th of July, Officer Freer initially assumed that maybe Dean was just out somewhere having fun with his friends, but she could see just how concerned that his parents were. And not only had they not heard from their son in more than 24 hours, but his cell phone was also turned off and none of his friends knew where he was. So she was starting to get the inkling that something more could be going on here. So there was one person who Dean's friends had been unable to reach. This is a 20-year-old boy who Anthony and Bonnie weren't familiar with when they heard this boy's name. And this is Cosmo DiNardo. So according to his friends, Dean was familiar with Cosmo because of riding around on ATVs, but it was their opinion that something just wasn't right with this kid. So Officer Freer was told that Cosmo lived in Bensalem in Bucks County, so she contacted the Bensalem Police Department to get some information about him, and she was given a name, a date of birth, and the registration number for his pickup truck. And she came to find that he was from a prominent family that ran 2 lucrative trucking and cement businesses. And although they owned a home and they lived in Bensalem, they also owned a property out in rural Solebury. It was sitting on 90 acres of land. It was 25 miles away is where Solebury was. So when Officer Freer tracked down Dean's cell phone, she discovered that it was last used at 8:14 p.m. on Friday night. This is the night he yelled down to his dad in the basement that he was going out for 15 minutes. And where did it ping but Solebury Township, exactly where Cosmo's family owned this land. So 2 days after he left home on Sunday, July 9th, she met up with Officer Gary Forrester from the Solebury Township Police Department, and the two headed over to the DiNardo's land together. They arrived in the middle of the night just after 2 a.m. So the location was very isolated, and because it's 2 a.m., it is pitch dark. And like I said, this is 90 acres of property, so it's very expansive. So they kind of wanted to just drive out there to get a feel for what they were dealing with. So they found that there was a dilapidated home on the property, and it was clear based on the way that the house looked that nobody was actively living in it. There was also a shed that was situated at the back of the house, but they found no one was there, so they left the property at about 2:45 in the morning. So after Officer Forrester was back out on patrol, driving around, he just had this niggling feeling inside of him that something just wasn't right. So he let Officer Freer know that he was going back to the property, and it was about 3 a.m. at this point. So he was only gone from the property for maybe about 15 minutes. And he just thought, I want to take a second look around. So he approached the shed, and he actually opened the door of the shed and he peeked inside. And he was surprised to see that there was a car parked inside, and it was in good shape. And this is in stark contrast to what this property looks like, because it looks like it's abandoned and no one would be spending any amount of time there. So then he shone the flashlight, that was leading to the shed, and he could see that the tire marks appeared to be fresh. So that it looked like somebody had recently driven the car there. And then he shown his flashlight into the backseat of the car. He could see that there was clothing strewn about, but there wasn't a person in the car. So when the dispatcher ran the 1996 Nissan Maxima's license plates, they found that it was registered to someone named Thomas Mayo. This is a 21-year-old from Plumstead Township. So another officer is hearing this over the radio, and he immediately got on, and he informed Officer Forrester that Thomas Mayo's mother had been at their station earlier that very day to report him missing. This made for the third missing man in this localized area.
How old was Tommy, did you say?
21.
Okay.
So learning this information, Officer Freer went to Cosmo DiNardo's family home in Bensalem. Now it was 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. This is July 9th, because she just wanted to get some answers. Why is this missing boy's, truck or car, I should say, in the shed?
Yeah.
So Cosmo's mom, this is Sandra DiNardo, she answered the door and explained that her son wasn't home. She said he likely wouldn't be back until later. So as Officer Freer got in touch with other police departments trying to learn as much as she possibly could, she was told that Tom Mayo's friend, 22-year-old Mark Sturgis, was also missing. Now we're looking at 4 missing boys. 2 are 19, 1 is 21, and 1 is 22. So they were now dealing, like I said, 4 men in Bucks County. What are the odds that within days these 4 boys go missing and they're unrelated?
0.
So this is 19-year-old Jimmy Patrick, who was last seen on Wednesday, July 5th at 6 p.m., 19-year-old Dean Finacaro, who was seen on Friday, July 7th at 6:30, and then 21-year-old Tom Mayo and 22-year-old Mark Sturgis were together. They were last seen on Friday, July 7th at 7:30 p.m., same day as Dean, 1 hour later.
Wow, okay.
Yes. So other than Jimmy, who vanished on Wednesday, all the other 3 boys vanished Friday. So according to Melissa, this is Tom Mayo's mom, her son was a very affectionate boy. He grew up to be incredibly selfless. He was always making sure, despite being so young, like a 21-year-old, he wanted to always make time for his family. He was always there to protect his younger sisters, who were 9 years younger than him. And after he graduated from Ben Salem High School, he attended East Stroudsburg University for about a year. And then he realized that maybe school wasn't for him, and he decided to go into a construction job. And in the months before he vanished, he also had a second job. He was working at a local gas station. So while he was working at his construction job, it was a perfect situation because he had his best friend by his side. This is Mark Sturgis. So Mark had recently moved into an apartment that was set up at his dad's home in Pennsburg. And according to his parents, he had always been the peacemaker of the family. He was just a gentle person, and he would step in for anyone who needed help. He would diffuse any kind of issues between his loved ones. You know, that person who is just like always wanting to bring people together.
A peacemaker. And
exactly.
Everything. Everybody likes him. Yeah.
So Melissa last saw her son Melissa last saw her son when she woke Tom up before she went to work on Friday morning. She gave him a kiss goodbye, and then she left because he was getting up for work to meet Mark. And after work, Tom came home. He shared a bowl of mint chocolate chip ice cream with his sister Gabriella, and this was the last family member to have seen him. So when Melissa got a call from Tom's girlfriend on Saturday morning, she was asking Melissa if she knew when Tom was coming to see her. She lived in Philadelphia, and Melissa was confused because it was her understanding that he had already gone to see her. So when Mark and Tom had been at work together on Friday, they worked with Mark's dad, also named Mark. He overheard the 2 boys saying that they would probably go out that night together. So when Mark went outside a few hours later, this is Mark the father, he saw that his son and his son's car were missing. So he just assumed that they just went out. You know, we're talking about a 21 and a 22-year-old. If you're not working, you're usually out with your friends.
Yep.
So it wasn't until the next day that he started to worry after they didn't show up for work that Saturday because they were really responsible people. So now, according to Mark's mother, this is Amy King. Her son met Tom when they were in 9th grade together. They basically hit it off instantly and became close friends. They bonded over their love of the guitar, and they spent much of their time together. And Mark was the type of kid who just stood up for people that he believed needed him. And when Amy last heard from her son on Friday, he let her know he was still at work. He said that he loved her. All of these kids came from very, very loving families. Each indication was like, we love you, we'll see you later, and then they don't come home.
Yeah, all seem like really good parents.
So when Amy wasn't able to reach Mark the next day, she was not at all worried because he was someone that was notorious for not charging his phone. He was not at all into social media. He would be someone that would not touch his phone for days and not care at all. So she just assumed he was probably either working or out with his friends. So by 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, Bucks County had formed a multi-agency task force to find the 4 missing boys. Officers were dispatched back to the DiNardo property to conduct a more thorough search of Tom's car. So, like I said, this car was parked inside the shed. It was unlocked. There was no sign of a struggle. There was no blood right there or anything like that. However, it was very odd because they found both the title for the car as well as the car keys up against the wall of the shed. And they also found Tom's diabetes supplies in the car. And this was highly concerning because it sounds like he was a type 1 diabetic and he couldn't survive without his insulin. So this made them think at this point he was without his medication for 48 hours. So they were highly concerned and wondering, is he still alive?
Well, same for all these guys, unfortunately.
Absolutely. So the 4 boys' families, they began starting to do their own investigation. They were trying to see, are these cases somehow connected? So Amy King, this is Mark's mom, she called Dean's family to see if they had any ideas, basically putting their heads together. Do you have any idea where they could have gone? And Anthony, Dean's father, also got a call from a private investigator. It sounds like this is the one that Jimmy's grandparents had hired to see, do you know of any connection between them?
Yeah.
So this is the point that it truly dawned on Anthony just how horrific this situation had gotten. So, however, Sharon Patrick was adamant that Jimmy did not know the other boys. So she was still assuming that maybe his case was not connected, despite the fact, though, she was admitting Jimmy did know Cosmo DiNardo.
Okay.
It didn't seem like they were very close friends, but they graduated from the same high school. Cosmo had graduated 1 year before Jimmy had. So when Officer Freer was sent back to speak with Dean's parents, this is Anthony and Bonnie, she asked if they had any security cameras around their property, and although they didn't, they knew that a neighbor that lived up the street did. So Officer Freer went over to this property, then the neighbor was, super helpful. He reviewed the footage because obviously we know when Dean called down to his dad and said, hey, I'm going out for about 15 minutes. So that's the time frame they were looking at. And this is when they noticed footage of a silver pickup truck that was leaving the neighborhood. And lo and behold, it matched the truck that Cosmo drove. So investigators went back to the DiNardo family home and arranged a voluntary meeting with police that was held on Sunday, July 9th at 2:30 p.m. So Cosmo is sitting there in the police station maintaining that he had no idea where the boys were or what happened to them. Obviously, we know his truck is seen on surveillance video by Dean's home leaving, so he couldn't deny it.
Yeah.
So he admitted that, yes, he was together with Dean, but he said that while they were driving, they got into an argument. So he claimed that he stopped the truck and let Dean out on the side of the road and drove away. He said from there, he went fishing at a local park until about 9 p.m. And because at that point in time, they didn't have enough evidence against him, he was allowed to leave the police station. Obviously, investigators know that there is likely way more to this story. So the task force reached out to the media in hopes of getting more information, and soon the case had gained national attention.
Wow.
Because there are 4 boys missing, all within 3 within a day, the same day, and 1 2 days before.
And we kind of know who it is. And as long as there's enough evidence that comes out, we can get the guy.
So when word leaked that investigators were focusing on Cosmo DiNardo, the media tried to dig up as much as they possibly could about this kid. And he lived a nice upper middle class life. And although he had run-ins with the police in the past, most of these instances had not resulted in charges. However, according to the Bensalem PD, over the years, they had more than 24 contacts with him. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Many of which involved Cosmo getting aggressive or combative with his family members. So months before the boys went missing, he had been charged with possessing a firearm. This was something that he was not allowed to have because he was struggling with mental health issues. So now, of course, Dean's family and all the others are hearing about this, and it was Dean's family's opinion that Cosmo never faced any charges in the past because his family was wealthy, they were prominent, and it was basically just brushed under the rug in their opinion.
My least favorite thing to hear in all these stories.
So they were truly disgusted with this fact. So Cosmo was a frequent user of social media, and he often ranted these angry thoughts or threats towards others online. He and Jimmy Patrick were Facebook friends, And when authorities spoke to Cosmo's friends, many indicated that they had begun to distance themselves from him because of his just odd, aggressive, bizarre nature that he seemed to be developing. He was known to harass women online, act generally aggressive, and if he was selling something online, let's say, for example, because this actually happened, a pair of shoes, ammunition would be depicted in the photo for absolutely no particular reason. Basically, probably just to look like a badass.
Right.
So a friend of Cosmo shared a photo of him, and in the photo, his eyes were wild. He was shirtless, and he's holding this revolver that had a laser attached to it. And they're just looking at his face thinking, what have you done to these 4 boys? So investigators focused on Friday night, July 7th. This is the night that Dean, Tom, and Mark all went missing. And they started to look at the automatic license plate readers, or ALPRs. And these are attached to patrol cars.
I know them very well. I sell them.
You do. So the readers around the Solebury area were scanned. They were looking for Cosmo's truck and Tom's car. And they were able to determine that Cosmo had been in a very specific general area of Tom and Mark, where they had been on Friday when they disappeared. And not only that, but his truck was also within a quarter mile of his family's farm.
How about that?
Yes. So all the pieces are adding up that most definitely Cosmo is involved. So this information was in direct contrast to what he sat down in his voluntary interview and told police that he was out fishing until about 9 p.m. on the night that the boys went missing. So tips and investigative leads allowed investigators to learn that Cosmo had been trying to sell a car that was consistent with Tom Mayo's. This is that Nissan Maxima where the title and the keys were there.
Yeah.
So with this, they were convinced that they had either been kidnapped or harmed, or that Cosmo had either kidnapped or harmed these 4 missing boys. So the district attorney had Cosmo DiNardo arrested on a refiled weapons case that was originally dropped, and he was held on a high bail.
So like they needed something. They're like, all right, at least we got him on this.
Right. So with the stacking evidence against him, investigators were able to obtain a search warrant for the DiNardo Solebury properties. This is where the car was found. So since the 90-acre property was very expansive, it was surrounded by dense woods, cornfields, hills, a valley, and a pond, investigators broke up into groups. So when the team entered the old barn that was on this farm property, they noticed something very disturbing. There was blood spatter and pooling inside that was consistent with a very critical injury, likely one that's involved death, or resulted in death, I should say. But they were unsure whose blood was it and how long had it been there. So in the midst of all of this, Anthony Finicaro, this is Dean's father, he had this like little shred of hope when Verizon suddenly contacted him and let him know that his son's phone number had dialed 911. So this is like recently.
Oh.
So when he contacted investigators to let them know this information, they explained this was actually us.
Oh.
We found Dean's phone on this property. We called 911 in order to identify whose phone this was. So it was not looking good.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah. So on Monday now, Richard and Sharon Patrick were told that Jimmy's last cell phone ping hadn't actually been in Springfield in Delaware County as they were initially told. It was actually from Solebury. So this was when they finally started to believe that their grandson was likely connected to these other 3 boys and to Cosmo DiNardo. It was that ping in Springfield that made them think the whole time, no, Jimmy is not connected to this.
Yeah, which is kind of an important point. You want to try to get these things right.
So for whatever reason, according to investigators, sometimes cell phone towers just trip up and they show the wrong location.
Okay.
I thought that was weird.
That's ridiculous.
So the DA soon informed the families that Cosmo DiNardo had posted 10% of his $1 million bond, which was equal to $100,000, which allowed him to walk free.
Didn't make the bail big enough.
But the point is, like, this is in the midst of a quadruple suspected homicide. They're finding Tom's car there. The title's there. He's trying to sell it. There is blood spatter in the barn. And this guy is walking free.
You think they'd set no bail, perhaps?
Right. So obviously, members of the community who lived in this area were highly concerned that a person who potentially killed 4 people is now walking free.
You know why? Because the judge was probably connected to his family.
Possibly.
I mean, I don't know for sure, but that's the only. I hate when people that are big in their communities can get away with stuff. And you got to think that there had to be some kind of favor. I don't know. I'm only projecting. I have no idea.
It's so disturbing.
Ugh.
So during the 3rd day of the search, this is on Wednesday, July 12th, a team began to focus on a pile of large rocks and disturbed dirt that was on the property. And just remember, this is a very, very large property. So they're looking at this, something just doesn't seem right to them. So they started to dig in this location and they started to detect a strong odor of gasoline. So at this point, Cosmo was rearrested for stealing Tom Mayo's car, and now his bail was set for $5 million. Because as they're digging, they're very confident that what they are going to find is not going to be good. So as the team continued to dig into the darkness of nights, all of a sudden their shovels struck metal, and they came upon an oil tank, which is otherwise used as a pig roaster. So people convert these oil tanks into roasters.
Sure.
So just below the roaster, they noticed a piece of blue tarp that was sticking out through the dirt. So on Thursday morning at midnight, July 13th, investigators found multiple human remains under 12 feet of ground.
Wow.
And based on the tattoos as well as the clothing that the 3 victims wore, they were sure that they had just found Tommy Mayo, Mark Sturgis, and Dean Finacaro. So right now they have 3 out of 4. Jimmy Patrick is still missing. So through his attorney, Cosmo agreed to a deal with Bucks County detectives that he would say where Jimmy's body could be found if the death penalty was removed from this case and he could serve the rest of his life in prison.
Sure. It's cheaper that way.
So they agreed, and Cosmo began to cooperate with investigators. So he's sitting down with detectives and he is coldly explaining that his killing spree had begun with Jimmy Patrick on Wednesday, July 5th. And he said that he was the middleman, for dealing drugs. And in this case, he was giving Jimmy such a good price for marijuana that he wasn't even making any money. So he said that when he picked Jimmy up on that Wednesday, he expected to be given $8,000.
Wow.
Which to me seems ridiculous because Jimmy is a college student.
Well, Jimmy paid for his guardian's car.
Right. And I get that. But marijuana, $8,000, like how much marijuana would we be talking about?
Freaking lot of marijuana, especially in the black market. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot. Pounds.
And again, this is just Cosmo's version of events, so take it as you will.
Yeah, he's just trying not to give the death penalty and everything. And he's obviously a scaredy cat and a little baby. Oh, you can kill people, but you can't get the death penalty. Yeah, he's scared little.
So apparently he says when he picks Jimmy up, he's expecting to get $8,000, but instead Jimmy gave him $800. So Cosmo said he offered to sell Jimmy a shotgun instead, and when they got out of his truck at his family's property, he handed Jimmy the gun in question that he said he would sell him. So Jimmy is currently distracted, and he's looking at this gun, and he has his back to Cosmo. And for whatever reason, Cosmo suddenly shot him dead. And then he retrieved the backhoe that was on his family's property, he dug a hole, and he buried him. So 2 days after Jimmy's murder, it is now Friday, July 7th, and Cosmo brought his cousin, this is 20-year-old Sean Kratz, to the farm. So Sean lived in Philadelphia, and he did have some previous nonviolent run-ins with police, but nothing serious. So according to Cosmo, he and Sean came up with this plan to rob Dean. So they went out and they picked Dean up, and Dean was under the impression that he was just going out to buy a quarter pound of marijuana. So they go out to the farm and they went to the barn on Cosmo's property. And he said Dean was looking at a Vespa that was inside the barn when Sean began to shoot him until he fell to the ground. And despite the fact that Dean was very clearly deceased, Cosmo took the gun from his cousin and he fired even more shots at Dean. So the blood spatter and pooling that they saw in the barn belonged to Dean. So after Dean's murder, Cosmo left Sean at the farm to meet Mark and Tom. They met up at a nearby shopping center for a drug deal. We're talking about marijuana here. So Mark parked his car, he got into Tom's car and followed Cosmo back to the farm. So Cosmo told investigators that they could sense, when I say they, Tom and Mark could sense something just wasn't right there. So when they turned their backs to him, he suddenly shot Tom in the back, and Mark is utterly stunned and started to run away. And this is what Cosmo was sitting there telling investigators. He says, he was such a big kid. I unloaded the gun into him. And at this point, he tells investigators, this is so heartbreaking, that Tom was still alive. He was laying paralyzed in the driveway, screaming, I can't feel my legs. So Cosmo realized that he was out of bullets. So he went and got the backhoe and ran Tom over, killing him.
My God.
So Cosmo and Sean placed 3 bodies into an oil tank that had been converted into a pig roaster. They lit it on fire and they left the farm. And on their way back to town, they stopped off to get some cheesesteaks to eat. So investigators could see that reality was suddenly setting in for Cosmo as he's making this confession. So he was previously sitting there giving this information in this eerily calm manner, but by now he was sobbing and saying he had no idea why he had done what he did. So as part of his deal, he told investigators that Jimmy's body could be found buried 3/4 of a mile further back from the other 3 victims. So with this, 4 families were left utterly shattered, unable to comprehend how their beloved children could have been so callously taken from them for no reason whatsoever. So investigators began searching for Cosmo's cousin, an alleged accomplice, if he's telling the truth. This is Sean Kratz. So when he was brought into custody, the task force interviewed him, and Sean admitted that although he had witnessed 3 of the murders of Dean, Tom, and Mark, he said, I did not shoot Dean as Cosmo said he did.
Yeah, you also didn't come forward to police either.
According to Sean, when Cosmo brought Dean to the farm under the guise of selling him marijuana, he told Sean to wait in the car. And after Dean and Cosmo went into the barn together, he said it was only Cosmo that came out alone. He said he had been sitting in the truck the entire time. He never fired any shots. This was something, though, that while authorities were sitting there with him, they did not believe what he was saying.
Yeah.
So although Sean continued to insist that he never fired any shots, he was able to tell investigators where the murder weapon was hidden. Other than saying that his cousin had issues, he was unable to offer a motive as to why Cosmo would have killed 4 innocent young men. So over the course of nearly 9 months, authorities continued to pressure Sean for the truth, and he finally admitted his role in Dean's murder. So based on their initial plan, Cosmo wanted Sean to come upon Dean in the woods on a 4-wheeler. It was almost like they were going to be hunting him for sport.
Yeah.
But when Sean chickened out and didn't do it, he said that Cosmo got frustrated. So they went into the barn together, the 3 of them, and Cosmo gave Sean a signal, and he told investigators that he closed his eyes and he fired the gun. And he claimed that he hadn't come forward sooner because he was fearful of his cousin. So authorities believe that Cosmo killed these 4 boys simply because he could, because he had a sick and twisted mind and he wanted to hunt people, like I said, for sport. Mm-hmm. So on Friday, July 14th, 2017, this is 9 days after his killing spree began, Cosmo was charged with the 4 murders. He pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder as well as robbery and abuse of a corpse. And he was given 4 consecutive life sentences, so he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Sean Kratz went to trial, and in November of 2019, a jury found him guilty of the first-degree murder of Dean Finicaro and of voluntary manslaughter for the deaths of Tom Mayo and Mark Sturgis. and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
Good.
So in 2020, a documentary was released about this case, and it's titled The Lost Boys of Bucks County. Actually, a lot of my research was from that documentary. So 5 years after the horrific murders, Cosmo DiNardo's family settled a wrongful death case filed by the relatives of the 4 victims with a confidential settlement. They
Wait,
alleged...
Cosmo's family filed something and won something?
No, they settled a wrongful death case
somebody came after
that
them.
was filed by the relatives of the 4 deceased victims.
Good. If Cosmo's family got anything, I'd be pissed off.
No, of course not.
Okay.
It was a confidential settlement, but the family members of the victims alleged negligence by Cosmo's parents, who provided their mentally unstable child access to ATVs, guns, and construction equipment in what they described as a playland for illegal acts. So according to Sandra DiNardo, this is Cosmo's mother, before Cosmo began struggling with mental illness, she said that he had been a model son. He wanted to become an orthodontist. He played for the Bucks County Bears football team. He served on a township drug and alcohol task force. However, in 2016, he began treatment for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, and he was prescribed antipsychotics. So it was documented that he had these mental health issues, yet he still had access to all of this. The guns, the backhoe to do all of this horrible stuff.
Yeah.
He became obsessed with a Mexican drug cartel that had a disturbing ritual for disposing bodies. And only 1 year later, he would go on to murder 4 innocent young men.
So quickly. Like, I was like, he was maybe planning it for a long time or something. I don't know. But.
So regardless of the fact that justice has been served, life will never be the same for 4 deeply grieving families. Jimmy Patrick, Dean Finicaro, Tom Mayo, and Mark Sturgis. They had all been sons, brothers, and young men with their entire lives ahead of them. And each day their loved ones are left with an empty void in their lives that will never go away. And that is the sad and tragic case of the Lost Boys of Bucks County.
So crazy sad, man.
I had never heard of this case.
Me neither. I have a couple of friends that are from Pennsylvania. I'm going to ask them about it and see if they've ever heard. But it's so like just all within a couple of days of each other. Like this kid just like, yep, you know what? This week I'm going to kill some people. Like crazy.
It started on Wednesday at around 6-ish, and then Friday is when it all went down with the 3, and like 6:30 for Dean and 7:30 for Mark and Tom. He just so sad. I mean, obviously something inside of him snapped.
Yeah. And obviously, wasn't mentally well with all those antipsychotics and stuff.
Right. I mean, he had documented bipolar and schizophrenia.
Yeah.
But
man.
like, the family members had sued the family because why in the world would he have access to guns?
So the common thread obviously was this was their dealer for any marijuana needs. And man, so buying $8,000 of marijuana, I don't know if that was true or not, but I mean, the other kid got a quarter pound. That's a lot. Like an ounce is a lot. Like that's like to probably resell it, I would guess.
I would have to guess.
And I don't want to guess too much, but if Jimmy was buying $8,000 of weed, he was probably reselling it, and that's maybe how he got his car for his grandparents.
I mean, we could speculate, but
if that was a fact, then maybe. But who knows?
It's coming from Cosmo's mouth, and he's a psychotic murderer. So I would take what he says with a grain of salt.
Heavy dose of salt. I mean, all these kids seem like pretty decent kids. Or human men. They were 19,
young,
21.
19, 21, 22.
Yeah.
But I mean, they all had their lives ahead of them. They just all seem like wonderful kids that could have done anything.
And like you said, it wasn't like marijuana and, it was marijuana. It wasn't like heroin or anything heavier than that. It was like a lot of people smoke a lot of marijuana once in a while.
And it had nothing to do with the drugs. It was just him just killing for sport. I truly believe that. Obviously, he was very mentally unwell. But regardless,
But I'm saying the kids buying the stuff, like it's like, they're not involved in these like heavy duty drugs.
No.
It's like they're, you don't go to a weed dealer and expect like some bad stuff to happen.
Not at all.
That's like if you're going to get some cocaine or something. I don't know. I don't buy drugs. So that's the only drug I need is your love.
Oh, geez. That is really, really corny.
Yeah, it is. I'm corny too. Well, thank you so much for telling their stories. And it's just something to, keep your eyes on your kids. It's all these parents, again, they did like the good job. They're all like asking and saying, I love you. Like they're asking the right questions.
Right. And texting, hey, where are you? You said you'd be home in 15 minutes. It's been an hour. Like these were all very involved involved families, loving.
Yeah.
It's just truly heartbreaking, really. That's all I can say about it is truly heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening, and thank you for checking us out. If you're a new listener, we really appreciate you. A lot of new listeners. Come on, come on, come all. You're all welcome here, the Crime and Coffee Couple. And if you love what we do and what Allison does, all the research here, you can join us over on Patreon and get yourself some bonus episodes.
Yeah, once a week.
Yep. So
Did you say that?
I didn't. I didn't
Okay.
think so.
Every Wednesday we have a bonus episode.
We do. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Anything else, sweetheart?
Nope. And until next time, bye.